Welcome to Truckee Talks. On Tuesday, April 14th, the voters of Truckee will be asked to go to the ballot for two issues, Measures A for the road and Measures B for the schools. On today's show, we'll be discussing both issues. The first half of our show will be on Measure A for the roads. I'd like to welcome Steve Wright, Manager Town of Truckee, and on the other side, I'd like to have Breeze Cross, a big hello for Breeze, a local business owner and also past mayor for the town of Truckee, Steve Carpenter, past town council person, and Steve Frisch, local business owner. Let's start, Steve, with the facts behind Measures A. What would it accomplish, or what might it not accomplish, and what's entailed?
Okay. Measure A was developed through a citizens committee, one of several citizens' efforts and community efforts to try and find a solution to the town road problems which we inherited when we incorporated from Nevada County. And what this road committee has done has identified what they call the backbone roads of Truckee, those primary roads that most people use. There are about 32 miles of those roads, like Northwoods Boulevard, Donner Pass Road, Glenshire Drive, and there's quite a list that the proponents may want to speak to in further detail. What they have done, what they have done is identified those backbone roads, what it would cost to reconstruct and then maintain those roads over a period of time, and identified a funding source, which is a half-cent sales tax, which would be added to the existing sales tax that would go towards improving and then maintaining those roads. That tax is earmarked only for that use. It cannot be used for any other purpose.
Okay. Steve Frisch, you were on the committee that came up with this idea?
I was actually on both of the road committees,
Okay.
starting in October of 1994.
And why the half-cent sales tax?
Well, we looked at a variety of different funding mechanisms and came up with what we thought would be the best solution at the time. A lot of the other funding mechanisms had problems with equity questions, with questions of how they could be collected and the ability to collect them effectively. And we also were looking for a funding mechanism that would spread the cost of maintaining the roads out to a broader base of people. And as you're probably aware, about half of our sales tax comes in from people living outside of the area. But those are people that use the roads and use them during some of the most difficult times of the year. So it seemed that a sales tax was the best solution in our eyes.
Steve Carpenter, you were also on the town council when a lot of this was going on.
That's right.
What was your
and on both committees.
And on both committees.
Yes.
Okay. What failed with the first go-round? We had a ballot issue a year ago, 2 years ago?
Probably over 2 years ago now. The initial plan that came out of the committee was an effort that dealt with equity and snow removal issues and other things in a more all-encompassing fashion. And it had a sales tax piece and also had a parcel charge piece. And we asked the voters what they thought about it, and we put it to a vote. And the response was pretty clear: no, we don't want to have a parcel charge. And the town council listened to that and they said, okay, we're not going to do it. They responded by delaying any major road efforts, forming a new committee, a second evolution committee, and then came up with this new recommendation.
What was this committee comprised of? What kind of people served on the committee?
Members from all the major homeowners associations, downtown merchants, Chamber of Commerce, Planning Commission member, a council member, and not actual members of the committee, but they helped the committee were staff. We had all the public works people. Steve Wright, town manager, was there through most of it, so we had some continuity and an ability to answer the questions that a committee couldn't do.
Steve, what kind of revenue can we expect if Measure A does pass?
At the current sales tax generating levels, we would expect about $800,000 a year in new sales taxes generated for roads.
And how far would that go in the actual maintenance or repair of those backbone roads?
That will provide both reconstruction and maintenance costs for all backbone roads so that they will be up to and fully maintained to a permanent quality level. It is anticipated, based upon the engineering studies, that it will take about 12 years at that $800,000 level to bring each of the backbone roads up to a full standard and maintain them during that time period. And then, as we may talk about later, there's a sunset clause. The tax goes away after 12 years.
So folks shouldn't count on all of the roads being repaired next year if the initiative passes this year.
That's correct. It will still be incremental, pay-as-you-go, as income comes in, while we will proceed to do the worst roads first.
Okay. Breeze, you're opposed to this measure, and yet you've been an advocate of road issues for a long time. What's wrong with this one?
Well, the problem with this measure is that it's incomplete. It doesn't take into account all of the roads. The town of Truckee has 142 miles of roads supported by a population of 11,000. The fact that we have such a large non-resident population really impacts the town's ability to meet its road obligations with gas taxes, because those taxes are distributed on a per capita basis, and where we have a lot of non-resident homeowners, we don't get the benefit of their population figures in the distribution of the gas taxes. The original road committee looked at not at restoring all the roads and maintaining those roads. And we looked at the parcel charge as providing the revenue to provide the restoration not of just the 32 miles of backbone roads, but the entire 142 miles of road, with the sales tax measure coming along behind to provide the funding to continue to maintain those roads over time. We inherited about a $32 million deferred maintenance road bill when we incorporated. That bill continues to go up by the factor of inflation and also increased deterioration. And our roads are deteriorating at a rate of about $1 million a year. So with the money that the town has in gas tax and the sales tax, we felt that we could continue to maintain those roads. My real issue with this attempt to solve the problem with the sales tax measure and do just a piece rather than the whole program is that we're going to see how it works. We're going to try it and see how it works out. And I feel that we'll lose the impetus to go back and fix the whole problem. If people are looking at road restoration occurring, they're naturally going to assume that eventually it'll get to me. And I just don't feel that it's going to be as easy to get people working towards a final solution if we've got a part of a solution in place.
Kind of a piecemeal. Steve, would you care to address that? How is that looked at from the committee, the second evolution committee, in terms of this is only a part of the puzzle? How do we get the rest of it taken care of?
I think from what the committee looked at the second time around, the second road committee, that's definitely partially true, that this is not a total fix, and people should not be expecting a complete fix. This fixes the roads that have the most problems, the most deterioration, the roads that are the heaviest traveled, and the ones that are really facing a major financial challenge for rebuilding and maintaining over a long-term period of time. There's no doubt that road funding is going to be an ongoing question for the town. And I don't think that this is looked at as a final solution. It's looked at as a solution that will give us an opportunity to find new sources or to find new ways to come up with solutions to the total problem.
Steve Carpenter, do you have a sense of why the first initiative didn't pass? What it was that people were opposed to? Were they opposed to a parcel tax per se? Did they feel it was an inequitable solution?
It was a combination of a lot of things. Part of it was just the no new taxes group that came out. Part of it was it's too much money. We don't want to do the entire fix, so let's scale it back. And then I think another piece of the issue was it was too complex. There were too many pieces in the funding mechanism, and to explain that to people so they could vote on it was too difficult to do. This is real simple. Sales tax, it's shared by us and the tourists, and it fixes the backbone roads.
Okay.
That's it.
Let's talk about that sunset clause. What does that mean, a sunset clause? Explain that to the viewers.
Well, it means that in 12 years, this funding mechanism goes away. And to renew that requires a council choosing to put it on the ballot again, or a citizens group doing the same, and then another positive vote from the citizens to achieve that. The hope is that before 12 years comes along, we've got some history of success and it might continue, but it gives us a chance to see what happens in 12 years. The risk of not having a sunset clause was that some people don't want a forever type tax, and if there was no sunset, then there'd be more no voters, and if it failed for that simple reason, then that was a risk to the committee and the council and the community.
So, and it should be pointed out too that with the passing of Prop 218, that this vote would have to pass by a 2/3 majority of the voters in order to be...
It has to anyway. The authority was granted to the town of Truckee by the state legislature to put this measure on the ballot, and in the authority, in the legislation that was approved, it was a mandatory 2/3 vote.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with Prop 218.
So, Breeze, for you, the opposition may be more aptly described as strategy versus it's not an anti-sales tax stance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Actually, Steve Wright and I put in a tremendous amount of energy and effort in getting the authorization through the state legislature. I testified before 4 Senate committees and 3 Assembly committees, and also met with the governor's office in getting him to sign the bill that gave us the authority to put the measure on the ballot. My concern is, once again, it's not a complete fix. The last measure, the reason it didn't pass, I feel, is I agree with Steve that people didn't understand what the issues were. I don't feel that we ran a very good effort of public information, of explaining to people how the investment of $165 a year over a 7-year period,
I believe so.
over a 7-year period would put, and with the passage of a half-cent sales tax measure, would give the town completely restored roads within a 5-year period and the ability to maintain those roads in perpetuity. So for the investment of $1,000 of each property owner, within the town of Truckee, we would have roads that would add tremendous value to our property and roads that we can be proud of that would be safe. My concern with fixing the backbone is if the arms and legs are broken, who cares whether you've got a good back? You know, if you can't get to the backbone because everything else is falling apart and deteriorating, what good is it?
Is there a fallback position, Steve?
Well, I think it's important to note, to pick up on Breeze's point, that the town is currently spending about $300,000 a year on maintaining the roads. This sales tax will give the town the ability to take that $300,000 a year and use it on the local roads that are not covered by the backbone system. The sales tax will fund the backbone system, and then the remaining $300,000 a year that is currently in the budget and will remain in the budget will be used for the rest of the roads. So it should help to improve the quality of the local roads along with the backbone roads. Quite a bit of that $300,000 budget was dedicated to these backbone roads,
Right.
so you should see improvements in the local community areas. You know, the fallback position, I guess, would be to just continue to do what we're doing now, and if that's the case, we see a situation where we are facing about $1 million a year in deterioration on the road network. And it's very important to recognize that that has a cost down the line, that if we don't do something to fix this now, that the eventual bill that will come due will be much greater,
larger.
and it'll be a much more difficult fix.
Can I jump in for just a minute? Steve, what about that in terms of shifting those monies to other places and not instead of the backbone roads? Is the county going to jump in and accept any liability for any of this? And maybe you can kind of update
I think
her.
that the simple answer to that is no. We would not be relying on the county to come in and fund other road issues within the town limits. One of the things that the committee looked at was there are a couple of potential revenue sources that are yet unresolved for the town. One is a lawsuit that is currently underway between the town and the county, and that lawsuit challenges the county that they did not set enough property taxes, current property taxes, aside for town residents when incorporation occurred. And there is a potential that somewhere from $0 to $500,000 a year, or possibly even more, may be forthcoming, dependent upon how this lawsuit is resolved. The other potential revenue source is economic development, whether or not hotels get developed and there's more TOT, or our economy improves and there's more sales taxes, general fund sales taxes. And I think the committee's approach was, why don't we solve the backbone road problems, take some time to look at these uncertainties, these unknown revenue sources in the future, and then in the future decide whether we need to go back to the property owners for a property tax related parcel charge, or whether or not the town can solve the balance of the road problems independently.
And those, as you say, are potential incomes, potential revenues, not guaranteed
They're
by
not
any
assured
stretch.
in any way, shape, or form.
Breeze, I jumped in on you there.
Well, I would like to go back to the $300,000 that the town is currently receiving in gas tax revenues that's going into road maintenance. And assuming that that all gets redistributed
Where your emphasis is.
to the 110 miles of secondary roads, there's still going to be about a $700,000 a year shortfall in covering the $1 million a year deterioration cost that's occurring. So, and then there's still going to be about $30 million worth of restoration that has to occur that won't be performed. So it just seems to me that the $300,000 isn't going to go nearly far enough to do anything other than just put a little surface treatment on these roads, and it certainly won't go into the providing the reconstruction that is really needed in a lot of the outlying areas. The pavement management study that was conducted identified that 42% of the roads 2 years ago were in failure in the town, and that is not just backbone roads. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the backbone roads are in a lot better shape than the other
Secondary
roads.
or tertiary roads.
Right.
Breeze, so to sum up, and catch me if I'm wrong here or if I've misunderstood you, but you believe that a stronger initiative that gathers more revenue, maybe from a variety of sources, that had a better public campaign, a better publicity campaign, would actually score better for the town in terms of repairing the roads over the long haul than this does. This
Right,
just
but
doesn't
not
go.
just a better public campaign to sell it, but also more public participation in the development of
Okay.
it. We tried. We got all the homeowners associations. We got all the local business groups. We really attempted to do an outreach, but I don't think that we reached deep enough into the community, because I found as we were getting closer and closer to Election Day, we were hearing a lot of opposition that we would have liked to have had on the front end when we were developing the program, so that we can incorporate those issues and concerns.
Okay. We'll need to wrap up here pretty quick, but Steve Carpenter, I wanted to ask you, you're part of the committee, the Save Our Roads Committee. Who have you gotten support from? Are there groups that have come out in support of Measure A?
Every single group that we've approached has unanimously endorsed it. The Truckee Town Council, Tahoe Donner Association, Glenshire, Sierra Meadows, Downtown Merchants, the Chamber of Commerce, every single group has blessed this initiative. The Save Our Roads Committee decided that once the council put it on the ballot, we have to go out and do something, and that's what we've done, is tried to raise some awareness and get support and use that support to raise more awareness.
And around the
That's right.
circle we go. All right, well, whether you think it goes far enough or you don't think it goes far enough, it's everybody's responsibility to get out there on April 14th and vote. Please be sure that if you're not going to be in town, you do grab an absentee ballot and make sure that you get that into the voter's office. It's very important that we all participate in the process. Again, I'd like to thank all of my guests for being here today.
One last point.
Real quick, Breeze. 3-minute rule.
If yes, and I've enforced that a lot. If Measure A does not pass, that doesn't take away the town's ability to put the measure back on the ballot at a future date.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. All right, we'll see you in the ballot booth on April 14th, and thank you for joining us. We'll be right back with Vince Deveney and Measure B.
Thank you.
Hi.
Welcome back to the show. We're discussing measures A and B, and on the second half of the show, right now, we're going to be talking about measure B for the schools. With us here on the show today is Vince Deveney. Vince, welcome.
Thank
Vince
you.
is the Superintendent of Schools for the Tahoe Truckee Unified School District, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show again.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Vince, tell us what measure B is, what it would accomplish if it passes.
Sure. Well, Measure B is a big dollar item. It's a $35 million bond that will go to the parents and to the community of Truckee only. It will not affect the lakeside of the school district. It will only affect the Truckee schools. The intent of the bond is the first phase would be to build a new middle school to accommodate approximately 1,200 students, which would take that need out into the year probably 2020 something, 22, 24, somewhere in that if our numbers are correct and what we've anticipated. We would then convert the current middle school, Sierra Mountain, to a regular elementary school, K through 5 most likely, and that then would meet the elementary needs. Our high school will be at 100% capacity, but we do have room to grow at the high school, and so we would grow that with relocatable classrooms and so forth. The second phase, after the conversion and the building of the new school, would be to add a performing arts gymnasium center at the high school to accommodate indoor needs of students and to provide this community with some place that they could really go for major type performances that go on in the community that we can currently only seat 200 and 300 people comfortably. So it would give them an opportunity to have a facility that would hold over 1,000 people. Beyond that, with the $35 million, we would be able to add all the technology necessary in the classrooms to bring us up to what we currently know technology to be. In 10 years, who knows what it could evolve into. But that, and coupled with doing some enlargement of cafeterias and some roof work and asphalt work around the buildings and playgrounds, would pretty much take up the $35 million. The beauty of building, though, with your money is it qualifies you for state funds, and it's referred to as a 50-50 match, which really comes out about 40-60 in favor of us paying the 60 and the state 40, but we would qualify for the 40%, which would give us an additional large sum of money to do a lot of other work within the school district to bring facilities really to state-of-the-art status, and we could then have our needs met, we think, well into the 2020s.
Let's talk about the state of repair or disrepair that our schools are in right now. First of all, one of the issues that comes to mind is crowding or overcrowding. Governor Wilson has mandated classroom sizes be reduced, and that's happened in the elementary school.
That's correct. K through 3. It's not a mandatory program, but if you expect state funding for the program, you need to reduce to 20 students to each teacher, which we have been able to do in all 3 grades, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. With that, though, is the additional need for more teachers and more classrooms. And the classrooms, we pretty much, the question was asked last week when I spoke to a group, said, what have you done with my mitigation money that I'm paying you in developer fees and so forth? Well, we've taken that money and basically put relocatable classrooms on our campuses. They're very expensive to build and to put on campus, about $100,000 a classroom. And we've got 64 now on the Truckee campuses, which has narrowed down our playgrounds and the play area, and that's not healthy for kids. They need some room to run around and to be out in the sun or the snow, whatever it might be, to have a healthier environment. The classrooms are great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the classroom. It's just our core facility, the gymnasium, the cafeteria, those facilities get narrowed down when the number of students greatly increase. And we've got a lot of students. We're over capacity in every elementary school and middle school, and the high school will be at capacity in the following year. When I say over capacity, that's over 150% capacity in all 3 of those schools, Sierra Mountain, Glenshire, and Truckee Elementary. So we have a tremendous need in this community to house our students in a more appropriate manner.
Will this bond help free up some room in the high school? Will some of these bumping and moving action actually benefit the classrooms in the high school?
I don't know with the high school growth that will free up any room, but we will be able to build a couple of things that is desperately needed. One is the indoor facility for athletics, physical education, and our growing music program. And we will also be able to enlarge the cafeteria to hopefully feed the students on campus and eliminate the big traffic jam we have at lunchtime with all the students exiting. And it's really not a very safe thing anyway, so we could close that campus once we have the cafeteria enlarged.
I think you'll hear some ears prick up at that.
I think the students probably won't, that won't be a popular decision with them, but I think parents understand.
I think that, and I'm sure there's a lot of drivers out there around lunchtime that would be grateful for that,
Yes.
although, forgive me, students, I know how it feels to have a closed campus. How does Measure B, which is what we're asking folks to vote on in April, differ from Measure S, which passed 2 years ago now, was it?
Yeah, Measure S is every 4 years in front of the public, and it's totally for curriculum enrichment. Those monies go for curriculum enrichment and does pay some teacher salaries that teach those curriculums that enrich the students' opportunity here in school. I might mention, too, that our test scores indicate that we've done a really good job in this community because we're higher in the SAT than both state and national average, and we're higher in standardized tests, both state and national average. So our kids perform really well. We can always do better, but our kids are doing quite well according to national and state norms. So Measure S goes for that. Measure B is strictly to build. We can't use the money for anything but buildings, and that's exactly what it would be used for. We would establish a community oversight committee that would make sure what we said we're going to do gets done, and to monitor the expenditures, as well as building a new site. We would involve the community and have an educational specifications committee separate and apart from the oversight to make darn sure that that building meets every need that we think it should meet for the education of the
So
students.
parents and citizens will be involved
Parents
in
and
this as
citizens
well.
would be greatly involved, yes.
Okay. Just have a couple minutes left, but I want to wrap up with a couple points. Briefly, Vince, what's the downside to a bond? What?
Well, the downside is we're going to ask the people to pay tax on their property for 25 years, and the amount of the assessed valuation of your home determines the amount of tax, and the numbers that our advisors tell us it'll be slightly under $40 per $100,000 assessed valuation. So if you have a $150,000 home assessed, then you would be just under $60, 50-something a year. If you're $200,000, then it's going to be slightly under $80 per year.
And
It's a great investment, though, because you're investing in the kids and you're providing for their future and our future, really.
And then briefly, what would happen if Measure B doesn't pass? What are we faced with if it doesn't?
The options are pretty limited. More relocatable classrooms, narrowing down the space. Year-round school is not a threat. Year-round school, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It just, in the mountains with our snow conditions and the inability to have makeup days, it's a real trick to have a year-round school in a mountain community. So that definitely would need to be looked at, and we could perhaps go to the state and get some relief in terms of a waiver or something of that nature. But a year-round calendar only provides for 177 days, and the state requires 180, so right away we're 3 days less than the state requirement.
I hear Saturday classes.
And that's possible, certainly is.
Okay. Vince, thank you so much for being on the show. Again, to everybody out there, remember that April 14th is the day to vote, and if you don't have plans to be in town that day, please make sure that you do get your absentee ballot, get it in, and everybody needs to participate in the process. We'll see you in the voting booth. Thanks for joining us on the show.